Hey, Anthony,
Yeah.
did the Supreme Court just allow Trump to withhold SNAP benefits?
Yes, but also no. What's basically going on is that after the previous ruling by two federal judges that the USDA has to release funds from a emergency contingency account in order to fund SNAP benefits in November, the Trump administration, which does not want to pay those SNAP benefits, has asked the higher courts for an emergency stay on that order so that they can fight the order in court, essentially. They first asked the First Circuit Court of Appeals, which was the next highest court up. The First Circuit Court of Appeals declined the emergency stay, although they said they would be looking at the case itself. And after the First Circuit Court declined it, the Trump administration filed an emergency appeal with the Supreme Court for another emergency stay, basically. The Supreme Court has granted that, but that doesn't quite mean what I think a lot of people think it means. So what happened is that Justice Jackson, who is a liberal justice, has granted the stay, but she's granted it in order to pass the case back to the First Circuit Court, which can probably resolve it faster and with a better resolution than the Supreme Court can. This was a decision that was handled solely by Jackson because she's currently the one in charge of handling these emergency decisions. And by passing it back to the First Circuit Court, they can not only rule faster than the Supreme Court, but also probably put out a better ruling. The First Circuit Court is very liberal. All of the judges were appointed by Obama and Biden. The fact that they declined the administrative hold on their side means that they would likely rule in favor of releasing the funds in the first place, where the Supreme Court may not do that. So while yes, the Supreme Court technically granted what the Trump administration wants, I think that in the long run, this will play out better for the American people. And she did mention in her ruling that she expects the First Circuit Court of Appeals to finish whatever ruling they're going to pass on this case with haste, presumably so that people can get funded for the SNAP benefits.
What does this mean for the government shutdown?
Nothing immediately, but it does mean that the pressure is still on for the Republicans to end the shutdown and all of the effects that it's having on people, right? They're still trying to pretend like it's the Democrats' fault that the shutdown is happening. But I think the fact that the Trump administration is so eager to withhold these SNAP benefits in the first place, although there is money specifically set aside to fund SNAP in the event of a shutdown, shows how the Republicans are trying to weaponize this shutdown against the American people, right? The Democrats have agreed multiple times to end the shutdown if the Republicans will simply extend Biden-era healthcare subsidies by 1 year so that people can't afford healthcare. And the Republicans are trying to use literally starvation of the American people against the Democrats in order to get them to cave. They want people to be hungry, to starve, so that they're angry, so that they either turn that blame on Democrats or perhaps so that they riot so that the Trump administration can use the Insurrection Act to invoke martial law in the United States. And I think it's important to note that I've seen a lot of media lately attempting to frame the Democrats' latest offer to end the shutdown as some kind of weakness or caving to Republican demands right after the elections are in the Democrats' favor. And I don't think that's the case, right? The Democrats are trying to extend these subsidies by 1 year for two very specific reasons, right? First of all is by extending the subsidies by 1 year, it does force the Republicans to fight the same battle again next year during the very important midterm elections that could decide the future of our country. If we can continue the momentum that we've seen in this year's elections into next year and have a Democratic-controlled Congress that could impeach Trump, that could literally change the course of history. And by extending the subsidies by 1 year rather than permanently or by a longer term, the Democrats force that fight when it most matters. Additionally, changing the bill also means that it has to go back to the House. And that means that they have to open up again and swear in the newly elected representative, Adelita Grijalva, who Mike Johnson is currently refusing to swear in under the pretense that the House is closed during the government shutdown. So by continuing to request these 1-year healthcare extensions, Democrats not only force a very important issue during next year's midterm elections, they also force the House to reopen, which will allow the vote on the Epstein files to be released. And let's not forget, half of the reason this shutdown is happening is because it is a cover-up for the Trump administration in their continued attempts to cover up the Epstein files so that Trump and all of his cronies are not indicted or put in prison or worse because of their potential associations in those files.